Hello and welcome to the CommanDorks. I'm Tarren.
I'm Beef, and we're back again with two new Commander deck techs, which are both centered around Universes Beyond cards. Now, when we planned this video, we thought we'd be stepping into controversial territory with Universes Beyond, but in light of recent Commander bans, Universes Beyond seems pretty tame in comparison.
But in this video, I'm going to be discussing yet another Kindred deck of mine. I know, I'm a Kindred guy. Featuring Assassin's Creed cards this time around, with Ezio sitting in the command zone, leading his Brotherhood of Assassins in their never-ending struggle against the Templars, or in this case, my opponents. But after you're done with this video, be sure to check out Beef's Stranger Things deck by following the link for that in the description below.
Before Taryn drives in, are you looking for an easy way to play some Commander? Is your closest LGS too far away from where you live? Or are you tired of playing with random people every time via spell table? Well, look no further, because we'd like to invite you to the OGS Discord server. It has a great community of fun people to play Commander with on a regular basis. We both use it all the time whenever we want to test out decks for these videos, and we're going to be including a link in the description. Once you're in, you can select your roles or power levels that you're interested in playing at, and then go into the channel for a given power level, type in /LFG to start a game queue, and usually within a few minutes you'll be saying draw for turn. I also hear they give out a prize each month to the person who's played the most games. You should check it out.
Alrighty, well, let's dive in. Alright, so I'm going to start off here with a couple of quotes from the Assassin's Creed games. So, first is, "Stay one's blade from the flesh of the innocent. Draw not attention to oneself whenever possible. Never compromise the Brotherhood." The other one is, "To say that nothing is true is to realize that the foundations of society are fragile and that we must be the shepherds of our civilization. To say that everything is permitted is to understand that we are the architects of our actions and that we must live with their consequences, whether glorious or tragic." It's a quote from Ezio. So that quote, I think, pretty well summarizes the philosophy behind the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood throughout the games. The Assassins fight for free will, believing that if people are given the chance to make their own decisions, peace can be achieved organically. This philosophy is juxtaposed by the Templars, who believe that total control over people is the only true way to guarantee peace. And both of these philosophies have their flaws, but the dichotomy between the two is the main driver of the action throughout the Assassin's Creed games. So, but yeah, that's tried to kind of, stick with the Assassin's cards and stick to the theme. So we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, with this deck, I really tried to stick with theme first. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have some potentially goofy things it can do. So. Moving on, let's talk about the commander, Ezio Auditore da Firenze. I'm sure I'm completely butchering that. Any Italians that are watching this, please don't make fun of me. But yeah, so he is a 3/2 human assassin that costs 1 and a black. He has Menace. It says assassins you cast have free running for 2 black. So free running, if you're not familiar, functions the same as the Prowl mechanic, except it specifically requires you to deal combat damage with either an assassin or your commander. And if you do so, you can then cast those spells for the listed free running cost instead of their normal cost. Whenever Ezio deals combat damage to a player, you may pay Wooburg, also all 5 colors, and if that player has 10 or less life, if you do, that player loses the game. So he represents a kill shot on the card. But yeah, so the biggest thing though is Ezio makes it very easy for me to get a lot of assassin creatures into play pretty quickly, and gets around the issue that a lot of 5-color decks typically run into with mana fixing, focusing primarily on black mana. So this is really think of it as more of a mono black deck plus all the others on the side. So that's how I like to look at it. It's mostly a mono black, but also has some other inside. So so yeah, Ezio represents an evasive kill shot in the command zone too. As long as I have that Wooburg mana available, my opponents die at 30 damage instead of the normal 40. And we have several ways of accelerating to that point. getting them to that 10 or less threshold. So let's talk a little bit about piloting this thing. So how do we pilot it? Very centered around the commander. So we do need to prioritize getting Ezio into play quickly and protecting him if possible. Once he is swinging through for damage, we want to be consistently deploying assassins via free running, and to provide ourselves added value on following turns and leave us extra mana for casting essential equipment spells and other spells. Once we eventually do reach the threshold of an opponent having 10 or less life, we have to carefully weigh our options, do a proper threat assessment with our eagle vision, and play a little bit of table politics. You know, there's nothing more politically motivated than assassination, right? So if if we're generous enough to let an opponent live another turn or two, we can try coercing them into helping us get the other two players in that threshold as well. And when the time comes, we got to pick a target and take the leap of faith and go for the kill. After which we get to say, Requiescat in pace. So, key pieces. I mentioned that we have ways of accelerating getting those life totals down, and a lot of these key pieces focus primarily on that. So, first on the docket, no particular order really, we have Quietus Spike, which is an equipment for 3. It also has Equip 3, and gives the equipped creature Death Touch, and if that creature deals combat damage to an opponent, their life total is reduced by half. In a similar vein, we have Virtus the Veiled. Death Touch is just a 1/1, and whenever he deals combat damage to a player, that player loses half their life rounded up. A new release that is pretty much a reprint, like a remake of Virtus, but much better, is Unstoppable Slasher. It's just a beefed up version of Virtus the Veiled. So this thing says it's a 2/3 with Death Touch. Whenever Unstoppable Slasher deals combat damage to a player, they lose half their life rounded up. And when Unstoppable Slasher dies, if it had no counters on it, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control with 2 stun counters on it. So 3 turns later, it's going to be swinging again. And so unless you find a way to exile it, with given enough time, it's going to keep representing a threat that's going to slash somebody's life in half. So another one, a recent inclusion that I've put in, another Duskmourn card, is Grievous Wound. It's 3 and 2 black, so a 5-drop enchantment aura. I don't know why they didn't make this a curse. I'm a little confused by that, but you enchant a player, and it says enchanted player can't gain life. Whenever enchanted player is dealt damage, they lose half their life rounded up. Dealt damage, any damage. So if they're pinged for 1, they lose half their life.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Naturally, I also put this in Vile Smasher because of reasons. If we only had waited to do that one a little longer, but anyway. That's in the deck. Another release from Duskmourn is the Lord of Pain. He's an assassin. He's 3 and Rakdos colors. 5/5 menace, says your opponents can't gain life. Whenever a player casts their first spell each turn, choose another target player. The Lord of Pain deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to the chosen player. So, well, yeah, he doesn't cut life totals in half, but stops people from gaining life.
He's kind of a better Kervek the Merciless.
Yeah, in a way.
Kervek the Merciless costs 2 more, but he hurts the people who cast the spell. So this is incentivizing your opponents to keep casting spells because their opponents are the ones who are going to get paid.
Exactly. And
so
if it's 1v1, you almost don't want him in play because you have to choose yourself every time.
Interesting.
So it's but I mean, it's still, even though it's not cutting things in half, it's still working toward getting those life totals down over time. So, yep, definitely a fun inclusion. And I found a perfect deck to fit Soren Markov. He's a planeswalker. He's not really an assassin in the lore either, but with how much black mana that we're focusing on in the deck, he's pretty easy to cast relatively, and his -3 loyalty is where it's at. Sorry, what'd you say?
He's player assassin.
He's a player assassin. So yeah, that -3, just putting somebody right at that 10 life is pretty good. And his +2 is not nothing to really scoff at. It's spot removal, keeps us alive a little longer with life gain, so not bad. Another really great piece is Vein Ripper. 6-drop, but Ezio gets him into play very easily, and just a large body flyer, built-in protection with Ward, sack a creature. And additionally, whenever a creature dies, target opponent's going to lose 2 life, and I'm going to gain 2 life. So another thing, over time, like Lord of Pain, over time, this is going to do quite a bit of work. And we also pack Vorpal Sword in the deck. It's a good early equipment that gives our creature a little bit of a buff and death touch, but late game serves as a kind of a backup of Ezio in a lot of ways, just a kill shot on a stick, as long as it's equipped. So, and we also run, so it's Ramses Assassin Lord, but I have a proxy of him that's John Wick. He's an assassin. He's an assassin. Anyway. But what Ramses Assassin Lord says is he's a 4/4 with Death Touch, gives other assassins +1/+1, and whenever a player loses the game, if they were attacked this turn by an assassin you controlled, you win the game. So with Ramses in play, or John Wick in play, I only have to kill one opponent to win. Very assassin. You're after the one target, and as long as you get that, you win. So I like it a lot for that. Vraska the Unseen, not a true key piece, but if I get to her ultimate ability, getting those 3 assassin tokens, and if I connect with any of them, that just kills an opponent.
Very on team. Very on.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that.
But yeah, so those are the key pieces of things that are really helping us get that Ezio activation going. That's the hope anyway. All right, moving into ramp pieces. So we have a few lands that help us here. So a new one from Bloomborough, 3 Tree City. It's a Kindred ramp land, it's kind of a fusion between Cabal Coffers and Gaia's Cradle.
Wow, yeah. As 3 Tree City enters, choose a creature type that taps for colorless, or you can pay 2 and tap it, choose a color, add an amount of mana of that color equal to the number of creatures you control in the chosen type.
Thank you. Yep. So yeah, like a lot like Great Gaia's Cradle, except for it relies on creatures of a specific type. So I also do run Cabal Coffers, because this is, like I said, mostly mono black. Let's see, we're running 20 of the lands that we're running are swamps, or can fetch for a swamp. So this usually has plenty of swamps to become relevant with this activation. And then not a land at first, but Dowsing Dagger is in the deck because, just a really good card in Commander, giving somebody the plants and then you swing at somebody else and flip it. And then, yeah, that Lost Veil taps for 3 mana. So we also have Lost Jite, which whenever the equipped creature connects, gets a charge counter. And we can use that to untap a land like Cabal Coffers, 3 Tree City, Lost Veil, and so forth. To get a little added ramp out of that. Can, give us some evasion, makes a target creature can't block this turn, or just buff a creature a little bit with a 1/1 counter. So, and we do also run the Sword of Feast and Famine. Pro Black and Green is really good, and avoids, it's going to help us avoid most spot removal in black, and helps us get around most creatures with Death Touch, because that's usually found in black or green. And notably, the trigger to untap the lands goes on the stack at the same time as Ezio's damage trigger, so I can order them where I resolve the Sword of Feast and Famine first to untap my lands, and then I pay that Wooburg for the kill shot if it's online. So
that's cool. I like that.
Yep.
Makes sense.
And then I do also have the Reaver Cleaver, which is serves a very similar purpose to Sword of Feast and Famine, where I'm making a bunch of treasures equal to the damage dealt. And I can use that, to feed into Ezio if possible. So, some mana rocks, we have just your usuals: Soul Ring, Arcane Signet. I do also have Chromatic Lantern here because 5 colors, great fixing. I also run Relic of Legends, just a really good one where if you're running a ton of legendary creatures, which this certainly does. So anything that you're not swinging with, you just have, serves as some backup mana to tap for. Crystal Skull, Isu Spyglass, another synergistic mana rock with all the legendaries I'm running. Functionally, +1 to my hand size at all times. A lot of equipment in the deck, so reliable way to, cast those things from top of library. So, okay, creatures in the ramp category. Mari, Killing Quill. Gives all of my assassins Death Touch and exiles opponent's creatures with hit counters when they die, and can be relevant to prevent reanimation effects. And she does pair pretty nicely with an Atrada in the deck with the hit counters. But yeah, otherwise she helps draw a card and makes treasures. All right, next up in the ramp is Olivia, Opulent Outlaw, 3/3 flyer with lifelink. And as long as an outlaw, or in my case, assassin, connects with an opponent, I'm going to be getting a treasure. Probably one of the better ramp pieces in the deck is Edward Kenway. Really like this card. He's a pirate assassin. It's everything you want. It's from Assassin's Creed Black Flag. But a great one to get into play with Ezio's free running. And my end step, he's going to give me a treasure for each tapped assassin I control. So really rewards me for swinging through with my creatures, which is what I want to be doing anyway. Synergistic with Relic of Legends. Lets me, tap my assassins if I don't want to be attacking with them, so I still get the treasures when they're tapped. So that should encompass all of the ramp in the deck. Moving to card draw, we've got Infiltration Lens. I was originally toying with Skull Clamp, but then I realized this is really good when equipped to a creature with Menace, because each creature that is assigned as a blocker is going to give me that card draw trigger for 2 cards. So if somebody really wants to block Ezio with 2 creatures, I'm going to draw 4 if this is equipped. So
love that. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I do like it. I think this card's kind of underrated compared to some other stuff. But all right, the Key to the Vault. So this isn't a true card draw necessarily, but if the equipped creature deals combat damage, I'm looking at the top handful of cards in my library, usually getting something into play for free. So it's a value engine just as much as anything that I would otherwise draw. So Basim Ibn Nishak. So this is a great one to have in my opening hand. This is the one exception where I would probably prioritize getting him out before Ezio, as he's going to generate a ton of value over time as long as he sticks around. And a majority of cards in my deck are historic, so that's going to help him out while he's in play. Black market connections, just kind of a thematic idea, assassins having connections to the black market. Treasure, draw, and the shapeshifter can be relevant if I want another assassin out there, because there's other things that look for assassins dealing combat damage. Search for Glory. I don't run any snow permanents in here, but the ability to tutor most any assassin in the deck to hand is pretty great. Cassandra Eaglebearer. So when I first looked at this card, I didn't think much of it, but then I read further and realized how good it actually is. So on ETB, she's going to tutor the Spear of Leonidas onto the battlefield from my library, my hand, or my graveyard. So as long as it's not an exile, when I play her, it's coming into play. And on top of that, she's going to draw a card for me whenever she sees a creature I control deal combat damage to a player, as long as it was equipped with a legendary equipment. But with the Spear of Leonidas, if you give that creature, the equipped creature, double strike, that's going to be 2 cards I draw. So I didn't realize that synergy immediately when I first looked at her, but then I'm like, oh yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, so, and we're running 6 different equipments that happen to be legendary in this deck. So,
oh, very cool.
But it does have a couple other options where I can do a loot draw effect, or I can create a 3/2 horse. I'm probably not gonna legendary horse. I probably won't do that a ton, but if I need a blocker, I mean, why not? Massacre Girl, Known Killer. So this is an evasive draw engine that makes my opponents hesitate to block my creatures. So whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, if its toughness was less than 1, I draw a card. So because of how crazy the ceiling is for that draw, I have a lot of removal centered around reducing toughness. And I'll get into those at a later point. Queen Marchesa. She's a hasty Death Toucher. Yeah, gives me the Monarch on ETB. And if my opponents become the Monarch, I'm going to be getting 1/1 Death Touch Assassin tokens. Great, go ahead, take the Monarch from me. Probably going to get back. So, and Ezio really helps, with get around the burden of the Mardu mana. Zira, Golden Sting, kind of similar to Queen Marchesa, just the Jund equivalent, I guess. Flying instead of Death Touch, When she attacks, I put a hit counter on another target creature without a hit counter. When that creature dies, I'm going to draw a card and get a 1/1 flying insect. Eagle Vision. This is a great draw piece for the free running cost. Borderline Ancestral Recall. So just a really solid direct draw. Ezio Blade of Vengeance. Just another, so it's another version of Ezio, but just going to draw me a card whenever he sees an assassin deal combat damage. And that paired with Bayek of Siwa and my, all my historic creatures having double strike, this could get kind of disgusting. Finally, though, I do also run Kindred Discovery in this deck just because I want to be attacking quite often, and it's just a crazy freaking draw piece, especially when I'm casting my assassins for 2 black most of the time. So, alright, moving into removal. So, if there is anything an assassin deck should be doing well, it's removal. So several of the creatures I have already gone through have Death Touch, so they kind of serve as a pseudo removal because of that. Soft removal, if you will. But we have packed several other ways to eliminate our opponent's key threats and keep the game state in our favor. So we have Slice from the Shadows, very on theme. The idea of an assassin lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. For X and a black, this is an uncounterable instant, giving target creature -X/-X until end of turn. Amazing synergy with Massacre Girl, Known Killer, like I mentioned earlier. Also, we have Tragic Slip. Again, with all the Death Touchers I'm running, there's a good chance things are going to be dying, and allowing this thing's Morbid to be active. So, paying 1 to give something -13 is... very few things are going to survive that. So, Nowhere to Run is a new one from Duskmourn. It's an enchantment that has Flash, and when it enters, target creature is going to get -3/-3, and it has a static ability that allows my opponent's creatures with Hexproof to be targeted, and my opponent's creatures' ward abilities do not trigger. Assassin's Trophy. Thematic spot removal here, but also pretty flexible because I can target any permanent. Hidden Blade is a stupid assassin trick. It's an artifact with Flash that equips to a creature when it enters, and if that creature is an assassin, it's going to get Death Touch until end of turn, and the equipment on its own just gives +1/+0 and first strike. Just a nice little combat trick. I do run Umezawa's Jite, very flexible equipment. Primary use will likely be to be spot removing to synergize with Massacre Girl, but alternatively can buff my equipped creature or give myself the life gain if need be. Dismember. So it's an instant for 1 and 2 black Phyrexian mana, so effectively if I pay the 4 life, it's 1 mana to give something -5/-5 till end of turn. So really good. The OG Massacre Girl, which is essentially a board wipe on a stick, synergizes with the other Massacre Girl very well. Each time her ability triggers, I can hold priority, so I can let it keep resolving until the other Massacre Girl's toughness is 1, and then use some instant speed means of protecting the other Massacre Girl, like, phasing her out or something. So, Raise the Palisade is a Kindred bounce board wipe that only hits, in this deck's case, non-assassin creatures. So, sometimes my opponents are just going to snowball faster than I can, and this is a way to help clear a path and let me take the edge. I had mentioned Vraska the Unseen already. She's just kind of that lingering threat with her ultimate, but she, is a way to potentially remove as well if things want to be attacking her, as long as she uses her +1. Calidus Assassin, which is a decent removal piece that I can get into play cheap with Ezio, copies an opponent's creature, then destroys something with the same name as it. So it's stealing value because I'm making a copy of something they have. I'm going to benefit from whatever that thing does and remove their version of it. So I like that. Atrata the Silencer. This is the one I hinted at earlier. So this is a 3/5 creature that can't be blocked. When she deals combat damage to a player, I exile target creature they control and put a hit counter on that card in exile. Then if a player owns 3 or more cards in exile with hit counters, that player loses the game. But the idea here is that I can prevent her from being shuffled if I use a few of the different ways I have to phase out creatures.
Okay.
So, and keep her in play and repeat that process. Or I could do something like sneakily recur her from the graveyard with the Animus or Altair. Recursion pieces. So Assassin's Creed is all about revisiting different points in history, and that's why we're packing a good amount of recursion so we can re-experience the creatures from our own history of the game. Or equipment that we've lost during the game too. So the Animus is a pretty good recursion piece, putting creatures into exile with memory counters, and so it kind of undercuts graveyard hate and can make a creature a copy of one of the exiled creatures until end of turn. Altair ibn La'ahad, main protagonist of the first Assassin's Creed game, shares a little bit of similarity with Kalia of the Vast and other Marduk creatures that like to see you attack. As long as I'm able to protect Altair and attack with him, I'm going to keep recurring the value of assassins with memory counters in exile. So things like Virtus the Veiled, Calidus Assassin, Queen Marchesa, all of those benefit from being recurred in this manner. So Back in Town is a pretty good recursion piece for outlaw creatures, or in this case, assassins. Similar to Agadim's Awakening, but easier to cast and no restrictions on how many targets I can pick, other than the mana that's needed for it. So Connor from Assassin's Creed 3, I look at him as a superior equivalent to Invisible Stalker. So he's going to have hexproof as long as he hasn't dealt combat damage, and can't be blocked as well. Makes an assassin token when he connects and recurs an equipment from graveyard to the battlefield, and then equips it to that assassin that was made. So, that equipment could be a Sword of Feast and Famine somebody got rid of earlier, or Quietus Spike, you name it. So it's going to help her to get the value from my equipment back, because there's quite a bit. Layla Hassan is the main protagonist of the current timeline of the Assassin's Creed games, kind of after Desmond. And as I said before, most of the permanents in the deck are historic, so when she triggers, she's probably recurring something back to our hand. And then Restart Sequence, I guess, is something, compare it to Reanimate. So the free running cost is 1 more mana, but there's no downside. I'm not paying life to recur the creature from my graveyard. So really good way to just bring something back immediately. Okay, Protection. So one of the key mechanics of the Assassin's Creed games is notoriety. And that is also very true in Commander. If you make yourself known as the main threat too soon, opponents are going to be on high alert and try to stop you in your tracks. So we've got a few ways to keep our own threats hidden from removal. So we have Slip Out the Back, kind of on theme. After an assassin makes their kill, they're discreetly sneaking out the back door unnoticed. So we have a preference here for phasing out our creatures because it also can protect the equipment that's attached to them, because the equipment phases out with the creature. So Galadriel's Dismissal. This one's not really on theme, but I really needed another way to phase out my creatures. But it's really good. It's flexible protection piece. It's kind of a second Slip Out the Back at the very least. So March of Swirling Mist. Again, similar to both Slip Out the Back and Galadriel's, but I can exile a blue card from my hand to pay for 2 of the X cost if I need to. Brotherhood Regalia is a significant upgrade to Whisper Silk Cloak, in my opinion. Ward is not as guaranteed to protect as Shroud is, but there is significant upside in being able to target your own equipped creature with your own spells. So, really good. Conqueror's Flail is in the deck because it's going to stop my opponents from interacting with me on my turn. And because it's a 5-color deck, I'm going to likely benefit from the buff that it provides in most cases. Haystack is a reusable way to phase out a creature I control. So this paired with Etrata is a really easy way to keep her around after she connects and deals combat damage. So Winged,
that's great.
Yeah, she does the hit and then goes into the haystack and comes back out.
So flavorful, so fun, such a good piece.
Yep.
Love that.
Winged Boots is a 2-drop equipment with Equip 1. Gives the equipped creature flying and Ward 4. So just a lot of value for the very little mana spent to get that equipped. Mithril Coat is a potential way to make an opponent waste a removal spell if I flash this onto the creature being targeted. So it gives it indestructible. All right, getting into utility pieces. So we've got so a lot of these are going to kind of function in that evasion category. So we've got Shizo, Death Storehouse, which is a evasion tech on a land. It's going to give a creature fear until end of turn. Cover of Darkness. So when that comes in, I choose a creature type and gives all those creatures fear. So they can only be blocked by black creatures or artifact creatures. Propaganda is a way to protect myself because, like I said, I want to be attacking a lot of the time, and I do have a tendency to leave myself open to others' attacks. So propaganda, I mean, number one, assassins, using propaganda to sow, muddy the waters and what have you. But it just makes it more difficult for people to attack me. So, and then Norn's Annex serves a very similar role, but instead of paying mana, unless they have white, they got to pay life. 1 for Phyrexian white for each creature attacking me. So, yeah, so I'll much prefer that over propaganda because I want those life totals to go down. So,
yeah.
I do have the newer Etrata as well, Etrata Deadly Fugitive. Potential way to steal value from my opponents. Makes it riskier for them to swing through when I'm holding up mana to flip a card face up because could be something big. Who knows? Aya of Alexandria is a great way to just get a ton of 1/1 assassin creatures with Menace. I mean, as long as Ezio's around, nearly guarantees me getting the free running active. And then finally, Bayek of Siwa gives all of my historic creatures double strike. So really good with anything that cares about combat damage happening. So that's like Aya, Etrata, Umazawa's Jite, Virtus, the Veil, so forth. Finally, the mana base. I also run Cavern of Souls here because it's a Kindred deck and way to keep Ezio safe on the stack when I cast him or something else. Brotherhood Headquarters. So that's just it taps for generic, but I can also add a mana of any color, spend this mana only to cast an assassin spell or a spell that has free running, or to activate an ability of an assassin source. So, Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, Plaza of Heroes is really good, just for anything with a ton of legendaries. Reflecting Pool, Secluded Courtyard, another, tribal sort of mana fixer. I do also run the World Tree for the mana fixing. I really don't have any trick like Beef does with his deck with the ability, but it's there for mana fixing. And finally, Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, because I want swamps. So if something that can't normally tap for black can, hey, that's great. I like that. Synergies and combos in the deck. I don't really run any infinite combos, but there are some pretty good synergies for winsies. So I mentioned earlier Ramses Assassin Lord, just him paired with the Ezio trigger, Vorpal Sword, Vraska the Unseen's Assassin tokens, Etrata the Silencer, or just killing an opponent normally with an assassin, just getting them to 0 life. Just great way to try and win outright. So, mentioned already, Etrata the Silencer with Haystack is fun. Soren Markov and the Ezio trigger. I think I've mentioned a lot of these synergies already. So, anywho, let's move into weaknesses and challenges. So, Ezio, despite assassins wanting to maintain a low profile, does tend to scare opponents quite a bit, I've found out. So I see myself being targeted pretty early on. Rightfully so.
There's a reason they're called assassins and not cuddles.
Yeah.
Assassination is not like a cuddle attack. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll cuddle you with my hidden blade. So yeah, this being a creature-heavy deck, I got to be at times careful about how many assassins I'm deploying to the board, unless I know I have some reliable recursion at the ready. So, and also menace. A lot of these things have menace. They can struggle a little bit when I'm up against token decks or things that have a very wide board state. So, but that's the deck. It's it's a lot of fun. I really like this deck. So, and it's not one that's like built the most, to be the most efficient, the most optimized. I just like the theming of it mostly. So,
That's kind of how I felt about humans too, which is why I think these are going to make for a good pairing.
Oh yeah.
That
Yep.
two tribal decks that aren't trying to be too hardcore, but can still do some pretty gross and
For sure.
things in their own right.
Yep. That's
So,
why I like
yeah.
tribal or kindred decks is, a lot of times when you're limited to or limiting yourself to a specific creature type, you're really not going for something insanely high power, right? Maybe there's some exceptions, but a lot of times you're going for theme. So, but
And you can find so many great synergies when you limit yourself like that too, because you find, like, I found all these human synergies with my 5-color humans, and you found all sorts of these little synergies that work really well when the assassins are all working together. And yeah, it's a great opportunity to showcase those kind of things.
yep, for sure. Well, all right. Well, if thanks for watching. Check out the other video, depending on which one you're viewing now, because I'll probably use this same ending for both videos.
Perfect.
So
we have an ending for both videos. We should do a quick shout out for our patron, Crash. Thanks, Crash.
yeah, thank you, Crash.
Being our patron. And yeah.
Oh, and join OGS. Join the
OGS.
Discord. We'd love to see you there. There's a good chance you'd be able to play with us there too if you hop in. So
Links down below. We'll get the games going. But join the channel, subscribe, like the video, send it to a friend, and let's get some Commander going, man. Join the CommanDorks.
Hell yeah. All right.